let's dive into that AI alignment segment where we unpack the latest debates, policies, and ethical questions shaping a safer and smarter AI future. Annie, bring us home. What's our AI alignment story this week?
Well, an oldie but goodie, Jeff. We're still at the battle of the states versus the federal government, or I guess the war of the states versus the federal government. And the latest battle is the big, beautiful bill. I'm assuming you've heard about this. Everyone's heard about the big funding bill, right? With the creatively named title.
I love that he took Build Back Better, the triple B acronym. He's like, you know what? We're going to make our own triple B acronym, the big beautiful bill, very on brand for President Trump. I felt like here, but tell me what's AI related in the big beautiful bill.
All right. So the latest funding package from the Trump administration, dubbed as the Big Beautiful Bill, contains a controversial provision that would impose a 10-year federal moratorium on state level AI regulations. So it basically says no state can enforce any AI related bill for 10 years because the federal government has, preemption rights here. So this is a very interesting development and not something you would expect in a funding bill, but nonetheless, here you have it.
So let's dive into this because I've this is like all over the Twitter sphere, and if you're in the AI world, like lots of people debating this. What does it actually say? And can you give me just the specifics on what it says? Then maybe we'll get into the cases for and against this kind of preemption at this point in time.
Yeah, fair enough. So, what does it do? It basically passes a 10-year moratorium on states passing their own AI related laws, or if they've already passed them, enforcing them, is sort of aimed to centralize AI governance at the federal level. So, no local consumer protection rules or like bans on facial recognition or algorithmic transparency can sort of supersede whatever the federal approach is. And then it's embedded, like I said, within a broader funding bill, potentially pressuring states to actually accept this because if the bill doesn't pass, then they're going to risk losing their federal funding. And so, even though they might want their AI bill to be able to be enforced, they also need that federal funding. Now, interestingly, what it does not do, so it argues, which I'm in favor of, that the federal government should legislate AI rather than the states. But it doesn't outline any plan for how it's gonna do that, right? There's no, like, oversight body, there's no, plan of here's how we're actually gonna think about that, and there's a big, of course, like, ethical standards gap where there's no sort of provision mandating that the federal government would pass such legislation or roadmap, so that's what's missing there, but
Wow. Leave it to us for we don't no commitment that we'll do anything. That's, maybe it feels like something I might tell my kids sometime and then regret later. What are the arguments for such a for doing this kind of thing? Tell me about, like, why does this make sense, at least on some level?
we've talked about this before, but the biggest argument in favor of something like this is uniformity, right? So having a patchwork of AI laws is going to be super complicated. If you think about you're on your phone and you're trying to do something and you get on a plane and you go from California to Chicago and now you're in Illinois and you have totally different AI standards and you can't access the same things on your phones, that's annoying, especially for those of us who travel all the time and are pretty tech forward. So the uniformity I think is important. The other piece is the innovation boost, right? So if companies are sort of having to stop and sort of figure out how to comply with this patchwork and enforce all these different standards, they're not investing in growth and development and this type of stuff. So that's another thing. And then another big argument in favor of this preemption is the economic strategy argument. So basically, if we want to keep the U.S. competitive with China and the EU, then they have centralized AI strategies. We also need a centralized AI strategy. And if we instead get stuck in this political quagmire between the states and all this type of stuff, it's just going to put us behind and it's going to put in giant ankle weights on us at a pretty important race is not where we necessarily want to be.
I get that, and there's certainly the competitive argument is pretty compelling to me that, like, we don't wanna be hindering our ability to compete in what seems like a pretty rapid race to a better future. What are the arguments, against? Like, why do we not wanna have this kinda thing?
Yeah, well, I think the states' argument's biggest thing is about civil rights risk. So the states have basically said, "Hey, federal government, you've done nothing, so we need to do something." It's really important from a civil rights perspective for the citizens of our states. We want to protect them from things like surveillance, discrimination, exploitative practices, privacy. We've already talked a lot about, right? So that is something that I think is top of mind for people, and so they're trying to fill a vacuum that they feel like has been left by not having a federal approach. I think keeping tech accountable is a big thing. People are really worried about big tech and big tech not having enough oversight. So the states are saying, okay, again, federal government, you've left a vacuum. Big tech is not overseen. We want to fill the vacuum. And so I think those are the big things, and again, like, the biggest argument against it is just you can't take away our plan when you don't actually have a plan to begin with, right? So, like, if you had a bill that you had put forward that had your laws around AI, then it could potentially preempt state law, and that would be fine, but you can't just preempt state law with no actual plan at the federal level of how you're gonna regulate it, so that's the other sort of big problem with the approach, but
Yeah, well, in 10 years is not like it's a 1 or a 2-year thing. It's like that's a long period of time, and particularly in an industry moving as fast as artificial intelligence is right now. So that feels like a pretty big ask to go a decade without doing anything on the AI front and no commitment to doing it from the federal government. But this is, as you said, wrapped up in a pretty big bill that has, I mean, this is like, I hate to say it's a small issue, but in the context of everything that's encapsulated in the big, beautiful bill, I think it is a pretty small topic. So it's probably not likely to be the ultimate cause of passage or a lack of passage, but it will have some pretty big implications on the AI industry, whichever way it goes.
100%. It will be a thing to watch no matter which way it goes.